on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
How are you, Dylan?
I'm doing wonderful.
Wonderfully?
No, I'm doing wonderful.
Okay, I guess that works for
Man,
us.
you always want to try to tell me how I'm doing. I'll tell you if I'm doing good, doing wonderful, I'm all right. It's on me to decide.
Okay.
Okay?
Sure, why not?
Like I told you earlier, you're going to fuck around and find out.
Find out what?
I don't know.
That you're a flaming dog turd? I already knew that.
Ooh, damn.
Yeah, ooh, sick burn.
It's a hot take.
Sick burn.
All right, how are you, Heather? That's the bigger question.
Oh my gosh. Can I just say that I am ready for winter break to wrap up and for folks to go back to school. Not targeting any specific person like my child or anything.
Or age
cough,
groups.
Cough.
I
But
feel like
the time has come.
I feel like you're not alone in that. There's probably more than one parent or parents out there who just want them to go away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love you, but get up out my face.
I truly think
I was not put on this earth to entertain you.
we can talk about indoctrination and the education system, the Rockefellers taking it over 100 years ago and all that mess. But I really think the only reason we support that still is for 6 to 7 hours of freedom daily
A
during
break.
the week. Yes.
A little breather, if you will.
And it's worth every penny.
Dylan, we have a bit of interesting true crime news that I thought we should discuss before we get started with today's case.
Yeah.
I know it's not time for the midweek just yet, but this is interesting.
Well, I'm going to insist you do one thing before you get started.
What?
You call out today's sponsors.
Oh, you want me to do it?
Yes.
And here I thought you were going to do that.
No, I want to hear you say it.
We've had some wonderful folks join us at patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast. Supporting the show, we have Carrie, Kristen, Renee, Rebecca, and Christina.
Yes, and we'd like to thank them for being today's sponsor, and we'd like to thank everyone for their continued support.
Thank you so much. Ron Jeremy has reportedly been declared incompetent to stand trial for more than 30 counts of rape. And when I say Ron Jeremy, I'm talking about, yes, that Ron Jeremy.
AKA the hairy porn guy. I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, the hairy porn guy.
Oh my God. So, okay. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Really?
Yeah. I've had.
Oh.
Is this breaking news?
Oh, no, this has been going on a while. There have been at least 20 women since June of 2020 who have come forward and claimed that the adult film star, retired adult film star, I should say, who is age 69, had sexually assaulted them.
What the hell?
According to the Los Angeles Times, Ron Jeremy, legal name, Ronald Jeremy Hyatt.
Oh, are you kidding?
No relation, is suffering from severe dementia and will be declared unfit for trial on January 17th and most likely will be placed in a state-run hospital.
Wow.
Interesting, huh?
So, now, do you know if these alleged rapes, happened over a period of years, or are they a recent thing, or do we know that?
I believe they have spanned several decades, Dylan, all the way back to the first allegation coming in 1996.
Wow. That's crazy.
The victims range in age from 15 to 51. And he pleaded not guilty and has maintained his innocence. He was initially charged with 12 counts of forcible rape, 7 counts of forcible oral copulation, 6 counts of sexual battery by restraint, 4 counts of sexual penetration by a foreign object, 2 counts of sexual penetration of an unconscious or asleep person, and 1 count of committing a lewd act on a minor.
Well, okay. Well,
He was indicted in August of 2021.
Wow.
However, He has been declared unfit for trial. They say that he has been examined by multiple, psychiatrists. They suspected he suffered from dementia before his arrest, and experts reached their conclusion based on medical documents, interviews with Hyatt, interviews with his relatives, and the LA County Sheriff's deputies who interacted with him during a period of incarceration. So they don't believe that he's faking dementia just to get out of, going to trial.
Right, and given his age and everything, it's quite possible he suffers from dementia, which is it's kind of a tricky thing. I mean, I get that he's not competent for trial, but if he did even one of those, if even one of those allegations are true, they could all be true. I'm not discounting what happened. Then he's a piece of shit, okay? And that's the bottom line.
A former British adult film star named Leanne Young, she's one of his accusers, and she told The Times she was kind of numb after hearing of this decision, noting that his indictment sparked a necessary conversation about consent in the adult film industry, and that at this point it's going to come down to public opinion, and public opinion has looked at Ron like a god.
Okay. I've always thought he was gross. I mean, just saying.
She conveys that it could be an indication to other predators or viewers of pornography that they can get away with these types of crimes.
Well, that's terrible for all the victims involved in this. And I guess at least he would be somewhere where maybe he can't assault people anymore. I mean, that'd be the only silver lining if he does go into some state-run home, which, I don't know.
One adult film star, Jennifer Steele Mondello, wrote a book. It's a memoir called Adult Agency, and she recounts the night porn legend Ron Jeremy allegedly raped her in the book, and she tells about her decision to come forward with that information in the book. So if you want to know more about it, you could always check out Jennifer Steele Mondello's book.
Wow, I just may do that. That's wild. I didn't know Ron was doing that to people. That's terrible.
Ron's a creep. And Ron was a teacher. Like before he was a porn star. Did you know that?
No.
I believe he taught history.
Wow.
He was a teacher. Like a high school teacher. That makes me wonder what kind of creepy shit he was doing back then.
Well, yeah. I mean, if he's doing this stuff, then once a creep, always a creep,
And then
right?
It makes you wonder, how does some guy like Ron Jeremy end up in porn?
I mean, I should keep it family friendly.
Were the standards just low back then?
Well, I mean, you got one main thing that you have to meet, one standard. And if you got that in any shape or size, the right stuff, as they call it back in the day, then...
Is that the New Kids on the Block song? Is that what it was about?
The right stuff. Oh.
And they were like, Ron Jeremy's got the right stuff.
We're talking about big penises, people, is what I mean.
Oh, of course you have to bring
And
that up.
he is gross. I've always thought he was gross. Like, he's just...
Is there anybody out there who thinks Ron Jeremy is sexy?
hot.
If so, email me, mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. I need to know.
Yeah, tell us about it. And we'd like to recount your sexiness for Ron Jeremy, honestly. You can remain
Your
anonymous.
sexiness? Maybe your how about just your sexual attraction for Ron Jeremy?
Well, your sexiness. That's what they call it. But yeah, so yeah, he's got that. I always thought he was kind of gross. He's so hairy and just weird.
Now you're hair shaming people. Don't body shame people, Dylan.
Okay, he just seemed creepy. I think that was the ultimate vibe I got from him. He just seemed like greasy. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I mean that by like just a weird, creepy way. Does that make sense? I'm not body shaming anyone. If you have lots of hair, then there's people out there looking for people with lots of hair, and you're going to be fine. That person's waiting for you to find them.
You are terrible at this. I'm just going to wrap it up before you say something else that just melts my brain.
Well, you
further.
threw me a softball. We're talking about Ron Jeremy.
No, we're talking about true crime, and then you turn it into something else. But that's fine. Let's move along because we have an interesting case, a fascinating case, and I'm going to speculate that most folks don't know about it.
Oh, okay. And I don't know anything about it, which I don't think surprises many of our listeners.
Honey, you don't know about this along with many other things, but that's not a discussion for now. Are you ready?
I'm the goldfish of the podcast.
I don't even know what that means.
They have no memory. Like literally their memory resets every few minutes, something to that effect. And like I go through the, podcast.
That is absolutely true.
We do the case. I'm present during the case for the most part, but then I don't remember what we did. Should I look into that? You think I have a problem?
I do.
Heather remembers every one. People will be like, oh, you should do such and such. She'd be like, oh, we did that 3.5 years ago and remember doing it. I was like, wow. Okay, let's go. Let's make the most of me being here in the present.
Oh, my gosh. A 3-story mansion with 18 rooms towered over Oliver Springs, Tennessee, and seemed a bit out of place. Built around the turn of the century by coal mining and railroad industrialist Joseph Richards, the estate was located about 30 miles northwest of Knoxville. The sprawling estate was on 600 acres and had mineral springs.
Wow.
Joseph Richards was born in Wales in 1826. Having earned a fortune up north, Richards moved to Tennessee in hopes of taking advantage of opportunities in the war-torn South in the days following the Civil War.
Ah.
Carpetbagger.
So he was
opportunist.
a well-funded carpetbagger.
Yeah. The town of Oliver Springs was originally known as Winter's Gap in honor of Major Moses Winter, the first settler. Growth remained slow, but by 1826, Richard Oliver became the town's first postmaster. The town was renamed Oliver's Springs in his honor, then briefly Popular Springs, and then back to Oliver Springs. Oliver had built a 35-room inn in the 1830s and began the first promotion or marketing of these mineral springs, which is kind of cool if you think about it.
Yeah, it is.
The inn was used as a hospital by both sides during the Civil War. Joseph Richards bought Oliver's land in 1873. He built the first resort hotel, which was replaced in 1895 by a 150-room hotel. From 1895 until it burned in 1905, the Oliver Springs Hotel was a nationally known destination. The railroad, which came to Oliver Springs in 1888, brought thousands of visitors to the spring. Due to being improperly insured, the hotel was not rebuilt after the fire, and the town decided to cover the springs in years later. Now, we live in a town where there was a spring, and during this time of sanitariums and these health spas that kind of took off in the early part of the century, the 1900s.
Yeah, I would say it was one of the first, when the nation becomes kind of health conscious.
We had Sulphur Springs, and there was the Sulphur Springs Hotel, and folks traveled all over to Haywood County, where we live, to take a dip in these springs.
Have you ever? I've been to a sulfur spring before.
You have?
Yeah. There's one down there not far outside of Shelby. And people would come from all around and get that water because they swore by the health benefits.
The healing properties.
Of drinking it or soaking in it and such. But it smells like eggs. So, it's kind of gross smell. Well, not gross, but it's, when
pungent.
Yes, pungent. Nice word.
Aromatic.
Yes, that's another good word to describe what I thought.
Were they hot springs?
They were not. They were just sulfur springs.
So just cold, stinky water?
Yeah.
And people would get in it?
People would get in it. People would come get it by the 5-gallon jug. It's one of those deals where they have the pipe coming out near the parking lot.
Okay.
We've seen a lot of those around our area.
We have. We also have Hot Springs, North Carolina.
Well,
another popular destination even today.
That made me think of Hot Springs because at one time it was quite the bustling little resort for this very thing, right?
Yeah, folks still go there today.
We go there.
But now you have to rent a hot tub, and they take the hot spring water and fill the tubs up.
I gotta say, I think there is some benefits from soaking in mineral waters like that, don't you? When we go, do you feel relaxed? Or is it just being in a hot tub?
I do, but I think it's mentally because I've spent $120 to reserve the signature tub with a fire pit and everything.
And
so then I feel like I have to psych myself up that I'm getting a lot of benefit out of my expense,
Okay.
but probably not. It's probably just in my head.
Well, you know what? No matter how you get to the result is still is a good thing.
Okay, well, Joseph Richards willed his estate to relatives who were unmarried. According to the will, when the remaining members married, the estate would be sold and divided among them equally. William Richards, Joseph's son, had lived in the home until his passing in 1931, so in this big 18-room mansion in Oliver Springs.
Okay.
Until 1931, leaving his wife, Margaret, and 3 daughters to live in the Victorian mansion. Minnie, his 16-year-old daughter, had died, and Joseph, the only son, had already moved out of the home by 1940. 3 sisters, Anne, Margaret, and Mary, continued to make the mansion their home. They were kind of considered spinsters of their day.
Ah, yes.
They were way past their prime for marrying.
14 or some very young age.
They were all like in their late 30s into their late 40s.
Oh, well, yeah. I think that you're definitely in the, as they would call it back then, the spinster realm at that point.
Mary taught school at Oliver Springs Elementary, while Anne and Margaret did not work outside the home. The Richards family had quite a reputation in town, and for decades. It all started when Joseph evicted Major John Hanna, a Civil War veteran, from the house he owned on the hill above Main and Spring Streets. Hanna died from an old wound in 1880, and the other Hannas were told they had to move out of this home. Now, Richards did own the home, and he rented it to them, but he evicted them, made them leave, which caused a lot of harsh feelings.
Well, yeah, you got a veteran. I mean, even today, that wouldn't be a good look for someone, even though it might boil down to economics. If you're renting a place and they can't pay it, then you got to get them out of there. But yeah, if you evicted an old war veteran and they passed away and then their poor families left behind, yeah, I could see that pissing people off.
Shortly after, the house burned. Once the house burned, Richards replaced it with this ornate Victorian-style mansion. This created a rift between the Hanna and Richards families because they realized he had basically forced them out of this house with plans of building his own big fancy home there.
Right.
This house on the hill that kind of overlooked the town.
Well, at first that makes me wonder who burned it. At first I thought it was someone pissed off because they threw the family out, but then it sounds like it could have been him just to clear the old house out.
Well, we don't know. Relatives of Joseph Richard disagreed with the settlement of his will, which led to many legal cases spanning 4 years. They quarreled over land, the house, the mineral springs, and timber rights. It created a lot of division among the family members. Mamie Sickneck is a granddaughter of Richards. She sued to have the will overturned. In a bitter court case, she lost to her cousins after 3 years of disputing her right to this home.
You know, I just hate that when this happens to families. They're, fighting over what's left over of the estate or whatever of a loved one. But I know in my heart, me and you will not have to deal with that.
Yes, exactly.
We will die in peace knowing that we have no estate and no one will be left out in the cold.
Oh, they'll be left out in the cold.
They're all going to get the same thing.
Exact nothing.
Nothing.
Getting a whole lot of nothing.
I'm spending your inheritance right now, you little shum bitches.
Exactly, and I have that right. Known as fashionistas, the Richards sisters were known for setting trends in the small town of Oliver Springs. Though they sometimes arrived late to church, they showed up impeccably dressed. When Gone with the Wind hit theaters, the 3 sisters made plans to attend the movie in Knoxville, each buying new outfits for the occasion.
Well, I think if you have money like that in a small town, I guess it's kind of easy to set trends, wouldn't you think? Because you have access to a lot of things other people can't afford, from places that have been in designs that they've never seen before, right?
I'm sure, Dylan. Yes,
Man,
absolutely.
I'm on fire today, and I just don't know. I don't know how I can keep this up.
Well, you're quite the trendsetter in our small town.
I am not. That's a lie.
I see you go out. You're always impeccably dressed. You're showered. You smell nice, which is better than 90% of the fellas in our community. I'm just saying.
I will say I feel confident that I smell better than most of the women and men and wherever I go. But I've gotten extra fat again, so nothing fits. So I can't wear my most daring outfits.
But you do always smell nice.
I do always smell nice.
You don't bathe in cologne, but you do always have a nice aroma about you.
The rule for cologne is people shouldn't be able to smell it unless they're within about 1.5 feet of you.
Is that the rule?
Yes. They should never taste you when you walk in a room. You've done too much.
Oh my gosh. We have to have a sidebar conversation here. It's been a few weeks ago, but I went into the local Family Dollar. I think I was like trying to buy some toilet paper or something. I don't know. But I go in and immediately the smell of fucking awful cologne, like something real super cheap, nasty, hits me. And I was like, what the hell is that? And it was all over the store. Then I was convinced that someone had busted a bottle of cologne in there.
Right.
And that's what I was smelling.
Okay.
But I really thought, who is in here smelling like Stetson rolled in aqua velva, right? I think someone busted a bottle. Either that or there really was somebody in there who was stanking up the whole store.
Oh, so you never came across the culprit?
No, but it was like, it was so overpowering. It was making my nose run and my eyes water, and I felt like I couldn't breathe, and it was like I wanted to start coughing, and I couldn't wait to get out of the store.
Well, I got to tell
and
you.
everybody was just walking around with a look on their face like, what the? You could tell. Everybody's trying to figure out, like, where's this coming from? It was awful.
It's too much. And actually, I'm not real sensitive to smells and stuff, but that type of thing, even it doesn't matter if it's the best smelling thing I've ever smelled or if it's $1 spray deodorant from the dollar store. It doesn't matter. When it's that thick and I can taste it, I mean, it just messes me up. Ugh. It's too much.
Well, you're a nice, smelly fashionista. Let's move along. It was a bitter cold morning on February 5th of 1940 when Mary was teaching at the elementary school. She sent a note to her sisters via 2 schoolboys that were in her class, reminding them of their evening movie plans. They were going to Knoxville to see Gone with the Wind.
Which was a big deal.
Very big deal.
That movie was huge.
The house wasn't that far away, so the boys return a few minutes later saying they knocked several times on the front door and no one answered. An 8-year-old named Tommy Diggs told Mary that he had heard some funny noises inside the house.
Thumps, clumps, something of that nature.
Or maybe it was clowns like honking their noses. I don't know, just funny noises.
Oh, wow, that's literally funny noises.
Maybe,
nice.
I'm not sure. A woman making a home delivery around the same time also couldn't get anyone to answer the door. The lady hears the voices of 2 men inside. Feeling uneasy, she leaves. Mary knew her sisters had a noon mission meeting, but was concerned that no one was answering the door. After waiting a period, she sent 2 more students to deliver the note again. But once more, the students are unable to make contact with anyone in the house. One student reported seeing a shadowy figure, likely a man, holding some kind of lantern in the basement window. By now, Mary is anxious. She finds out her sisters never showed up for the missions meeting. Mary's starting to panic, so she decides to go home and check it out for herself. When she walks up to the door leading into the kitchen, she finds her sister Anne laying in a pool of blood. Finding Anne, Mary runs from the house screaming. She didn't know yet, but there were 2 more bodies inside. Her sister Margaret and a 16-year-old house servant named Leonard Powder Brown.
Wow, what a great name.
Anne and Margaret Richards were laid to rest on February 8th of 1940 in the new dresses they had bought to wear to the movie. Immediately, the sheriff, Robert Smith, assumed it was a murder-suicide. He suspected that Powder Brown, a black teenager, had shot the women, then turned the gun on himself.
And I wonder what led him to that conclusion.
Brown was an orphan and had been taken in by the Richards family. The Richards were the sole income for many in town, including people of color, and reportedly had good relationships with them. Due to racial unrest, Leonard Brown wasn't given a funeral. He was quickly buried in an unmarked grave. Rumors around town spread that the KKK had threatened to drag his body through town if they had a funeral for him.
Okay. Well, those are some shitbirds.
But neighbors did not like this theory. Residents in town felt the sheriff had overstepped his bounds with the statement. Those who knew the victims felt it wasn't possible and pointed to evidence. There had been some discarded cigarette butts at the top of the stairs where there was a window looking out where someone could see sort of the comings and goings of the house. And they said, well, it seems like someone was smoking at the top of these stairs like it was an established lookout post.
Right. And I'm to assume either the sisters and the servant boy.
They were non-smokers.
They're all non-smokers. Okay.
Leonard Brown was known as a very timid young man who was, quote, afraid of his own shadow. He didn't like fireworks or the sound of guns. Like, he didn't like loud sounds. He was kind of skittish. He didn't, so like I said, he didn't like fireworks or the sounds of loud guns. And because Brown would turn white when he was scared or anxious, the color would drain from his face. That's how he earned the nickname Powder.
Okay.
Because he was kind of known as just being like a big old scaredy cat.
So anyone that knows him, it doesn't make sense that he shot both sisters and then shot himself.
No.
Because he has an aversion to guns.
No one believes this. And no one believes that Powder has any kind of motive to harm the sisters. He had a good relationship with them. By all accounts, they treated him very well. Bought him clothes. Paid him well. Like, sort of, like I said, they took him in kind of under their wing because he was an orphan.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably living a decent life.
A few days after the murders, a coroner's inquisition was held. The jury learned that Anne had been shot in the head and throat. Powder was shot between the eyes at a downward angle, which proved to be impossible for him to take his own life.
Wow. That seems like a semi-advanced forensics for the time.
Of the 28 witnesses who testified, none thought Sheriff Smith's theory was correct. Only 20 minutes into the inquest, the jury decided that the 3 victims had met their deaths at the hands of unknown parties. An investigation began into the murders. Authorities began making a list of suspects, people who could possibly have a motive for committing triple homicide. It didn't take long for names to emerge, people who had issues with the Richards women. Multiple theories were explored. There was a group of residents in Oliver Springs who were unhappy with the kindness that the Richards sisters had shown to the small black population in town. They often hired them for work around the house and the property. They were known for making donations to people, buying them clothes, giving them food, just showing kindness.
I mean, what business is it?
Being neighborly.
Yeah.
Treating people with respect.
And paying people a fair wage and just being just generally nice to people.
Yes.
You know what the hell business is it? That's a really dumb thing to be mad about.
There was a theory that Powder Brown had reportedly been upset that a Christmas suit purchased by the Richards sisters was not as nice as the one they had gifted to his friend. Yet it was proven that Brown didn't shoot himself, and people just dismissed this idea because they were like, that doesn't sound like Powder. He was a very grateful young man, and he would have been appreciative that they bought him a Christmas suit. He wasn't the kind of guy that was going to be pissy that his friend got a nicer suit.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, mine comes from the Men's Warehouse. His is tailored. I mean, that really pissed me off with this Christmas suit.
I want a Christmas suit.
Do you?
Kind of.
Can we start a tradition this year?
Where we wear suits?
Christmas suits?
Yeah, I want a red velvet Christmas suit.
I was going to ask you if you
Can
want
we wear matching ones?
if you want to go tacky, and you answered my question already.
That's not tacky.
Red velvet?
It's called fashion, Dylan. Look it up.
I don't know if that's high fashion.
It is. I'm sorry you don't have any style. Joseph and Mary hired a private investigator to dispute claims that Powder had murdered the sisters, then killed himself. The town marshal had allowed people in town to traipse through the house and handle the murder weapon before getting fingerprints off the gun. The crime scene was contaminated, not to mention they had limited forensics available at the time. It was determined the sisters had been killed before Powder. By the time Mary found Anne, rigor mortis had already set in. Yet Powder had not been dead as long. Witnesses reported seeing Powder in a store around 1 p.m. buying a loaf of bread. The cigarettes at the top of the stairs showed that someone could watch the comings and goings from the house. So again, using it like a lookout. And Powder was known to run errands every day for the sisters. So perhaps someone had posted at the window watching for him to return, which suggests that there is more than one assailant.
Yes, it definitely does.
The last person thought to see the sisters alive was a coal miner named Hardin Hensley. He came by the house around noon to pay for piano lessons for his children because the sisters did teach piano lessons. Margaret had put up quite a fight, so it was likely the assailant had wounds. They could tell she had like defensive wounds, and it seemed like there was quite a mess kind of around where they found her, as if she had tried to fight off the attacker and had maybe thrown some things around.
Good. I hope she hurt the attacker.
It was learned a few days before the murders that 2 black male convicts had been released from Brushy Mount State Prison only 18 miles away and had been at the Oliver Springs bus stop, which was located very close to the mansion.
Is that the prison we went to?
Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
Yes, Dylan.
That jail is in kind of a weird, which I'm sure is done intentionally.
It is very isolated.
It's very, to this day, it's very isolated. You travel for a good ways from Knoxville north, if I'm not mistaken. And wow, so that makes sense.
However, Mrs. Jones, the lady who had been making the delivery, remember she had tried to make a delivery and heard some strange voices inside. She quite clearly stated she had heard the voices of white men inside the home. Lucky for them, they were eventually taken off the suspect list because she had made it very clear it sounded like white men in the house. The Hannah family still lived next door to the Richards mansion, so even after all this time, like 50, 60 years has gone by since they were evicted from this mansion or from where this old house had been, they still live next door.
And they can see it. I'm like, damn them.
Exactly.
And their Victorian mansions.
It was discovered that the murder weapon had been stolen from the Hannah household. A man named Bill Sharp had recognized the weapon right away at the crime scene. The Hannahs and Richards were in a property dispute at the time of the murders over a property line and a tree. Hey, you, friend, podcast listener. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
We're inviting you to check out our brand new movie review podcast, Cult of Sleaze. We will laugh, cry, and review our way through some of the best, worst films of all time, focusing on horror, cult films, and B-movies. Join our Sleazoid Society by downloading Cult of Sleaze on Spreaker, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Podchaser, Google Podcasts, or CastBox. Well, anywhere you get podcasts.
That's my tree, you son bitch. No, it ain't. That's my tree.
Exactly.
I've seen people fight over the goofiest stuff, and I've seen real issues with property lines where people are obviously in the wrong. But not long ago, I had a repeat fence customer wanted me to come back, take the fence down that was between him and his neighbor that was already literally like 2 feet off of this house, and move it another 6 inches that way towards the house. So now we'd be 1.5 feet off the house. And I refused. I just blew the guy off because when we did the job, they were like arguing literally across us while we're working. And I'm not comfortable with that. You know what I'm saying? And it was some old people.
Bring me a deed, bring me a survey.
Well, there's been more than once I've had to just be like, look, I'm doing what the customer says. If you have any issue, take it up with them. Don't kill the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger kind of type of thing. But I know that these types of things, especially when they're ongoing, and these people had been through court, he had court papers and blah, this and that. And they've been arguing this was a couple of years ago, we did the project, and they've obviously still been arguing all this time. That can get dangerous. Those types of disputes can make tempers flare.
They can.
And the parties involved were old people, elderly people, whatever's the proper term. Don't want to be an ageist. And in my head, I'm like, They ain't got that much longer to live. What if one of them comes out like, fuck it, and shoots everybody and then shoots themselves?
Damn.
This is what goes through my head.
Okay.
It's not worth a few $100 to put myself in that position.
Well, let's talk more about the lawsuit filed by Mamie, the cousin. In 1936, she filed a lawsuit that would forever divide the family. Joseph Richards had been instrumental in the development of Oliver Springs and also Knoxville, as he sat on the board and was founder of the old Knoxville Iron Works. The fact that his son William was allowed to reside in the 18-room mansion caused a lot of resentment among the other children and, in turn, their families, who were jealous because they didn't get to live in a free mansion.
Well, yeah, then they want. I'm sure they want the estate sold and divvied up between everyone.
So, had Mamie been involved in the killing of her cousins? For many, Mamie had the strongest motive of all. Mamie had suffered through her own tragedy. In the 1920s, her husband was found dead at the bottom of a railroad trestle, apparently the victim of a robbery or accidental fall. Her husband, Dr. Sickneck, was filling in at Brushy Mount State Prison at the time of his death. The fall was not consistent with a 12-foot drop. His skull had been crushed, and investigators really thought it was a homicide, but they didn't have a suspect. They didn't really have any other evidence.
Yeah, 12 foot, that's not a terrible drop. A lot of us, even in my in my sore knee state, could definitely survive and might be able to do a 12-foot drop without getting harmed at all.
I know you were just upstairs complaining about your achy joints.
I was like,
I said, well, what do you think is going to happen when we're old?
I was like,
That's what happens when
why
you're middle age, bro?
are both my knees like sore, like I'd been doing some heavy lifting or some kind of a hard workout or something? I've done nothing like that.
I'm going to write a rap song. My neck, my back, my knees, and my hips.
My dysplasia. When you wake up sore and you didn't do anything to, like, when you wake up and you had a long day or you went hiking this big hike, you know why you're sore. You're like, okay, this will get better. But when you wake up and it's just random sore body parts or you get hurt getting out of bed, things like that, it starts to get worrisome.
Yeah. Well, at our age, I get sore just breathing.
I think I need a supplement. Anyone out there right quick know a good supplement for joint health? Hit me up at mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can sign up at patreon.com, Mountain Murders Podcast, and donate some money so Dylan can get himself some Centrum Silver.
Yes.
Okay. So they thought it was a homicide, but the case was never solved. Then 13 years later, her cousins were brutally murdered.
Okay.
So what do you think? Good motive, huh?
Well, I mean, I could see some people thinking that she has a strong motive because I guess that might push it on into maybe the state finally getting liquidated and, or maybe the next, whoever's considered the next one in line to live in the big 18-room mansion. What do you think?
Well, we're going to explore another theory, Dylan. The sisters, who were staunch Presbyterians, just like their Welsh grandfather, had been rumored to find bootlegged whiskey hidden in their church's basement. According to rumors, the women had turned over the information about illegal moonshine being there to authorities. It was suggested that the sisters were killed in retaliation by the bootleggers.
Okay. No, I think that's quite possible.
Although the triple murder had garnered a great deal of attention, the trail soon went cold. Of all the theories, residents chose their favorite, and everyone had an idea of who had killed the sisters and their servant. Authorities never had enough evidence to bring charges. Then there was a twist, Dylan.
What a twist.
In 2001, a break finally came to the case.
2001? Okay.
2001.
Okay.
A man came forward with a story implicating two men. As a young boy, this now grown man claimed he was near the Richards home and saw two men on the property. And he recognized the men. They were well known in town. Pillars of the community type of men.
Okay.
Okay. And after the murders, he saw the men again and they threatened him.
So it's like the men saw him as well.
They were like, do not tell that you saw us here or we will take you and your family out, kind of thing.
Okay.
For over 60 years, he'd kept the secret. And when he returned to Oliver Springs years later, his first question was, are these two men still alive? The two men had lived in Oliver Springs, and as I mentioned, they were well known in the community. As soon as newspapers began printing the alleged suspects' information, their families threatened legal action, which stopped the story in its tracks.
Really?
So it never came out fully.
So even in 2001,
The relatives
they
of
still
these
have
two
that
men,
much influence in the town.
These two men, yeah, the families were like, we're going to sue if you accuse our loved one with no evidence, because that's like defamation.
Look, you can't be telling your big city stories about my peepaw. He didn't do nothing. He was a man of God.
Being so traumatized by what had happened in her home, Mary moved to Atlanta, Georgia to live near her brother. As I mentioned earlier, they had hired a private investigator, but never revealed his findings to the public. Over the years, Joseph and Mary rarely spoke about the murders. They eventually sold the 18-room mansion to the American Legion for $1.
What? Really? Damn, what did that? I probably don't know. I wonder what in the hell the American Legion did with it.
Probably turned it into like a union hall or something.
That'd be that nice union hall.
Mary died in 1994. Or not a union hall, but a Legion hall. I don't know. What do you
Yeah,
wanna
I was
call
like,
it?
damn, they have a union, bro?
Whatever.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know. Like a Legion hall, whatever you want to fucking call it, bro. Police Chief Paul Massengill suggested in the early 2000s that Mamie, along with two men from town, were the killers. And Mamie died in her 90s. So the police chief believed wholeheartedly that this woman had her cousins killed.
So you believe the cousin did it?
Yeah.
That during all the years and the investigation, that's what he thinks the evidence proves. Okay. Well, it seems like everybody had their opinion in that area of which story they believed. Well, I'm amazed that, for one, years later, in 2001, someone come forward saying, hey, I was scared back then. I was threatened. I was a young boy. These people were influenza people in town.
They weren't influenza people?
Influenza people. I mean, influential.
What are you, me, a mushmouth bitch?
You old mushmouth bitch. Influential. They were pillars of the community. Without them,
I've always wanted someone to describe me as a pillar of the community, but not really because I was like doing good deeds, but just because I stood there like a pillar.
what is wrong with you? Seriously. She is literally just frozen and doing a statue pose now, people.
I did a lot of voguing in the early 90s.
You I can tell.
Okay?
I can tell.
I was a big Madonna fan.
Without these pillars, the community would not exist. And to come all those years later and say, hey, I would like to tell my story now, and still have people kind of like
You hush your mouth.
hushing him up. He got hushed. That's right. That's what happened. But now, and we still will never know the truth.
Well, today the location of the mansion is now a business, and people report seeing the ghosts of women on this property.
I guarantee people report that.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
But some good news to come of it is in 2001, Powder Brown was officially cleared of the murders. Betty Shelton, cousin of the Richards, paid for a funeral and a grave marker for him. She was glad to see the young man finally, properly laid to rest.
Oh, well, that was nice. That was a nice thing to do because there was no reason having to hurry up and bury him so a lynch mob doesn't drag his body through the streets is not a good that's not a good reason. I mean, I understand why they did that. But that's just makes me sick to my stomach just to even hear that.
One of my resources for today was a book by Danita Ashley, actually a resident of Oliver Springs, who wrote the book Murder by the Springs.
Noise.
And then various newspaper articles of the time.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Heather. That was pretty damn good. And I did not know anything about that story.
I knew you didn't.
And it's just right up the road.
Because even if you'd heard it before, you wouldn't remember it. I could just tell you the same story every week, and Dylan would be like, by gosh, that's the best story I've ever heard.
I'll be over here like, what the hell?
Poor Dylan.
Tell me one more again, that story, Miss Heather.
We have got a lot happening this year. Patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast. We are giving you all kinds of benefits, Dylan.
Yeah.
Not only are you getting ad-free episodes, a link to our Discord chat, but you're also going to get episodes of our other podcasts.
Yes, it is the testing grounds, right?
Because we have a few other podcasts in the works, and we've already posted a couple of episodes on our Patreon for folks to listen to.
We have, and I look forward to continuing that. And are you going to keep it as a secret? Tell them it's like not true crime podcast, people.
Yeah, so we have a movie podcast where we review cult, horror, and B movies. And then I have an 80s podcast.
I love Dancing with Myself is her 80s podcast, and I love it. It's just a little snippet of nostalgia you can grab anytime, like standing in line, waiting for a minute somewhere, and just have a lot of fun.
They're kind of like little tidbits, usually less than like 10 minutes.
It really takes me back. It really takes me back in the day when things seemed cooler.
Kind of a little history update.
Yes, and then, of course, you can catch Cult of Sleaze, our movie podcast. Brand new. We're trying it. We hope we can continue with it, and it works, because sometimes we wonder if people want to hear us. People do say, you could talk about anything, and I'd listen to you two. You're like friends.
Well, now we're going to talk about movies.
Well, and we're going to try that out.
And we're also starting a new series on Patreon that I'm very excited about, Dylan, where we're going to cover some of the worst when it comes to the FBI's top 10 list. But we're starting back in time when they created the list back in the 1950s. So for a bit on Patreon, we're going to kind of do this series where we cover some of those terrible criminals and the crimes that made them some of the most wanted in America.
Yes, and it sounds very exciting. I think that would be some very interesting subject matter, and I look forward to discussing that.
Yeah, so if you've ever thought about joining our Patreon, now is a great time.
Yes, and of course, you can always get you can join our Discord chat and be part of our Discord fam. Very small group of incredible people there. And I must say, Patreon's been kind of goofy. It's a glitchy here and there sometimes as far as what we see on our end. And if there's any patrons out there who I did not give you a Discord link and you're interested in trying, please hit me up either on message on Patreon or at mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. I want to get you in the fam. I want to bring you inside the house with us, people.
And if you're thinking about buying some merch, try out mountainmurderspodcast.com. We have a website where you can pick up t-shirts, mugs, hats,
all
kinds of cool stuff.
I had a great idea. A mug with my mug on it. My big stupid
I
mug.
don't think anybody wants that.
It would be like, what if we okay, here we go. What if we make it actually the size of my head? It would be like one of those great beer steins or something from Germany.
It's like a 64-ounce mug.
I don't know if that's enough.
It's like a gallon mug.
I think you could put a gallon of liquid inside of my skull.
I don't think anybody wants that, Dylan.
Okay, it's just a novelty item, people.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, I'm going to turn him off because he's a lot right now. All right, so thanks for tuning in.
Wow.
And we'll be back here in a couple of days with a brand new midweek for you. And we'll also be debuting our Mountain Murders Missing this coming week.
That's what we're going to call it. That's what we got to call it. I love it. Mountain Murders Missing.
Okay, Dylan, bye.